mix of drugs that civil rights groups say constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. 20 seconds into his execution, his final words were, quote, "I feel my whole body burning."
Burn in hell! Oh, burn in hell!
At Florida State Prison, he was strapped to the gurney. The authorities injected the drugs and then waited some more. Then they watched as Diaz's arm went black from chemical burns. Then after 10 minutes, obviously in pain, he muttered, "What's going on?" Now, you think the state would have stopped the execution then and there, but no. In this case, they just kept going. After 24 minutes, when Diaz should have been long dead, his head jolted. His eyes then opened wide, giving a fright to all the people watching. Diaz was cheating death. Again, if you are that way inclined, you might think some higher power wanted to see. He choked, and then people said his skin ripped. It was a terrible thing to behold. An expert later talked about his injuries, saying, "That's the kind of injury we see when a kid has fallen in a campfire or set his arm on." He described the injuries as skin slippage, which is a term you probably never want to hear again in your life. He also said he'd never seen anything like it. Then after 34 minutes, a doctor wearing a COVID mask rushed in to check Diaz's vital signs. He was dead, but you have to ask how they could let him suffer like that. Prisoners have rights when it comes to causing them incredible pain and emotional anguish. Well, in some cases, they do call it off. When that happens, killing someone turns into trying to save someone's life. It's actually believed something like 7% of lethal injection executions are botched in the U.S., but perhaps the worst one involved a man named Clayton Lockett. His case was exceptional. He was also given a lethal injection of drugs. In case you don't know, the cocktail has 3 potent drugs. One part should knock the person out, the next bit should make him paralytic, and the last part should stop his heart. On a good day, that is. It should work, but judging the correct doses involves a bit of guesswork, and the person doing the guessing sometimes isn't a medical professional. The Atlantic explained, these officials base their confidence that a certain drug will work largely on the fact that it has seemed to work in the past. Lockett, a convicted killer, was given his lethal injection. By all accounts, the prison had had difficulty getting the drugs. This is why things didn't go to plan. They also used a sedative that wasn't usually used, called midazolam. In fact, a paramedic later told the press that lots of things seemed wrong that day. She said the syringes were the wrong size, and the tubing on the IV was not the right kind. Nonetheless, Lockett was strapped down in the death chamber while waiting for the drugs to be administered. The paramedic stuck in the needle and blood flowed into the barrel. So far, so good. But then the IV came loose, and she tried to put the needle in again. It didn't work this time. Lockett had been an intravenous drug user, something that had damaged his veins. The paramedic later said she was told if you fail 3 times to get the needle in, you have to give up and let someone else do it. A doctor stepped in to help, which shouldn't happen, given that docs swear on the Hippocratic Oath never to cause someone harm. He didn't like the look of Lockett's arms, but then he saw the perfect vein in his neck. He turned to the paramedic and said, "Get me a needle for the jugular." As he was trying to stick the needle in Lockett's neck, the paramedic was working on his arms. Failure again, so the doc tried to find a vein in Lockett's groin. It was starting to look very bad. Then they brought out longer needles, and still they failed. And that's when the doctor asked for something called an IO infusion needle, described by the media as a kind of power drill that gets right into the bone instead of a vein. Now, embarrassed, they asked Lockett if he was okay. He replied, "I was going to see if I could get my mouth wiped off." They then finally got a vein. Lockett said he had no last words, after which the warden said, "Let the execution begin." The sedative was pumped into him, but the IV came loose and most of it went right into his tissue, not the vein. So he wasn't knocked out. He was evidently conscious of what was going on. He then seemed to go to sleep, so as usual the lights brightened and it was time to check if the condemned was completely sedated. He wasn't. The doctor even pinched him to try to get a reaction. He then said he's knocked out enough, so they injected the killer part of the cocktail. Then, when Lockett should have been dead, he twitched. He looked as though he wanted to talk. His legs moved. His hands moved. He was evidently in pain. The warden later said he thought, "My good God, he's coming out of this." He was. He lurched forward trying to get off the gurney. At that moment, the witnesses were in utter shock. Lockett's lawyer even started crying. Lockett was now twisting violently and trying to speak. His heart was only beating 20-something times a minute, but he was very much alive. He finally did manage to speak, saying one word, "Man." The doctor then lifted up the sheet and saw a massive ball had formed in Lockett's groin area. It was a ball of the drugs. Blood was also running down his thighs, but they didn't stop. The paramedic told Lockett to take a deep breath as she tried to get the needle back into place. She then told the doctor, "You've hit an artery." As if things couldn't get any stranger, they then talked about giving Lockett CPR and taking him to the hospital. The paramedic later said that the point was to kill him, not save his life. Subsequently, the doctor asked the warden what to do, to which the warden replied, "Is there another vein available? And if so, do you have another set of of chemicals back there? The doctor said no to both questions. It was only then that they decided to stop the execution. That was officially decided, so now the doctor and the paramedic raced to save Lockett's life. They weren't fast enough. He died 10 minutes later after having a heart attack. The Lockett family later sued the prison, the executioners, the drug makers, and even 2 pharmacies. They said the new drugs that were used pretty much constituted human experimentation, something the Nazis might have done back in the day.
Mr. Wood was gasping for air about in 5-second to 12-second intervals for almost 2 hours, an hour and 50 minutes. There was a deacon there who was praying for him, and there were several witnesses. He turned around, at the very beginning, he turned around and looked at the gallery, kind of was looking all around while he was being prepped. The victim's family seemed pretty disturbed. At one point before Mr. Wood was executed, he turned around and gave them a pretty wide smile that they interpreted as him kind of mocking them. After the execution, they spoke to the media, and they were very outraged, really, that the media had focused so much on the drug combination and on the issues surrounding, the legal issues surrounding the execution, as opposed to what the family had been through.
You guys are blowing this all out of proportion about these drugs. You know, this man, conducted a horrifying murder. And you guys are going, oh, let's worry about the drug and how he affected. Well, why didn't we give him a bullet? Why didn't we give him some Drano? Why didn't we give him something else? Everybody's worried about the drug.
What I saw today with him being executed is nothing to the day it happened on August 7th, 1989. This was nothing. I don't believe he was gasping for air. I don't believe he was suffering. Sounded to me as though he was snoring. Finally, it's come to a part of our lives that we can put somewhat of this behind us and continue and move forward.
Laid there and took several gasps. I counted probably more than 600 gasps during the nearly 2 hours that it took for him to...
Let's get high. Can't say so. We've announced that we're going to do it again.
It doesn't say so.
Okay.
It remains on.
Okay.
Time at 12:26, 30 seconds.
Commissioner,
Yes.
the doctor verified that he is still alive.
Needs execution.
Very well. We're ready to go again. Ready.
Better check all the connections. Val,
Yes, sir.
did you tell the witnesses that you were repeating?
No, I didn't.
I think you should tell them.
Okay. You want me to just advise them that
Just advise them.
beginning the process and not go into any detail?
That's right.
Positions and vital
Wait just a minute.
position and vital signs.
Commissioner, Superintendent is entering the execution chamber and approaching the mic at this time to advise the witnesses that we will proceed again with the execution.
Well, listen, you can tell him there were some vital signs remaining, so the execution will repeat. You can get that message to him.
Oh, it's too late now. He's already briefed them and he's on the way back in, sir. All right. That shows the time is 12:28.
Okay, Commissioner, we'll proceed this time. On the count of three, the pressure button. 1, 2, 3.
Commissioner, Mr. Long, the execution is initiated again at this time. The condemned made one big jerk, and now he is relaxing in the chair. I do not detect any other movement from the condemned at this time. We have completed the first and second phase of the execution. We are now into the third phase. I do detect his head moving side to side again. We're still into the third phase of the execution. Commissioner, Mr. Long,
Yes.
he is still at this time moving his head from side to side and appears to be breathing. We'll continue just like we did previously.
You'll have to check that back.
We have 15 seconds remaining on the third phase of the execution. Commissioner, Ms. Long, the third phase of the execution is completed. The equipment is switched off, secured at this time. We're now into the 5 minutes lapse time.
What is the status on condemned?
Sir, he appears to be breathing to me.
You're going to have them check those sponges and check their connections. There's something they don't have connected right, Willis. So that,
Yes, sir, you want us to go ahead and complete this whole thing and then,
yeah, complete your phase, and then you're going to have to make your check.
okay. Commissioner, Mr. Long, we have completed 1 minute of lapse time. We have 4 minutes remaining. I might also advise at this time that I do not detect any movement from him at this time. He appears to have stopped moving. Still no movement from any of the witnesses. They were just sitting very still, observing the condemned in the chair. Show the time at 12:32. We have now completed 2 minutes of phase time, lap time. We have 3 minutes remaining. Might also add that I do not detect any movement from the condemned. Commissioner, Mr. Long, we have now completed 3 minutes lapse time. We have 2 minutes remaining. There is still no movement from the condemned. Commissioner, Mr. Long, we have completed 4 minutes of lapse time. We have 1 minute remaining. Still no detectable movement from the condemned. He does seem to have stopped moving entirely. Commissioner, Mr. Long, we have completed our 5 minutes lapse time. Stand by for the physician's check. At this time, the superintendent and the 2 physicians are entering the execution chambers for their check. The first doctor is now in the process of making his check for vital signs. Show the time at 12:36. I show the time is 12:37. Second doctor is still in the process of conducting his check for vital signs. 12:37. time, Commissioner, Mr. Long is in the process of briefing the witnesses that at 12:37 hours this date, the condemned was pronounced dead. He has instructed all witnesses to depart the witness room. Back to the front of the institution. At this time, the curtains are drawn.
Anyway, my question is about spam on the internet from my email. Hello?
Say my name. The toughest motherfucker on YouTube. You're goddamn right.